Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'm going to take a look at another political storm at Labour around leader Keir Starmer. He's written an op-ed for the Sun newspaper. He's been attacked, predictably enough, particularly by Liverpool Labour MPs, but also in an act of hypocrisy by some of the former Labour leadership. So, is Starmer's move sound here from a practical, political and principled point of view? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So for those who don't understand the significance of the Sun newspaper in this context, and the people who watch this from outside of the UK, very quick history. So in 1989, there was a football match hosted at Hillsborough. It's in South Yorkshire, where I grew up, but it was between Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. Now, owing to what we now know was down to an inexperienced police commander being in charge of the operation to manage the fans' entry into the stadium and making a right arse of it, 96 Liverpool fans were killed in a horrendous crush. It's now up to 97 deaths caused by it. Now, this was not the fault of the Sun newspaper. However, they deliberately reported false stories of some pretty horrendous acts on the part of Liverpool fans, which we don't need to repeat, at the scene of the carnage. So, like I say, I'm not going to go into the details, but let's just say the people of Liverpool, who are already grieving from the loss of so many sons, have been so outraged by this disrespect, and above all, fabricated accounts, that you cannot really openly even buy copies of the Sun in Liverpool. I gather you can, but it's all very cloak and dagger stuff. It's persona non grata there. So the idea of a Labour leader writing for the Sun is contentious. So let's go through the facts of the matter. And although I'm going to add a conclusion of my own, sort of, you can make your own minds up at the end. So, in defence of Starmer, first of all, before I get onto my particular criticisms, which may not be the same as other people's criticisms, in order to win power, Labour need to get their message out to people who have not been voting Labour for over a decade now. There's no point in just keep firing up the people who vote for you anyway, because do you know what? The same thing will happen at the next election, you'll lose. So this means, of course, they have to write articles for newspapers whose readers, will generally be invited to vote Conservative. So to this end, Starmer has been writing in some Tory newspapers whilst he's been leader. It didn't half infuriate me when, for example, Jeremy Corbyn supporters would complain about how the mainstream media is so mean to their former leader. You know, they keep saying this, it's so untrue. And I would say, what's he doing about it, I would ask. What is he doing about it? Why isn't he writing rebuttals and getting them published in those papers so that the readers can hear the other side of it? Which he had the right to do, but he didn't. He just wrote articles for papers that were kinder to him anyway and his project. You know, so you would see articles from him in The Guardian, in The Mirror, in The Independent, but that'd be it. You know, in terms of the mainstream media. So he was only ever writing to people that were going to vote for him anyway. So we need to be writing pieces in papers read by those who are at the very least sceptical of Labour. And at the same time, however, although I've just said that, the Sun is a slightly different prospect. It's a particularly unpleasant beast. Give you an example. The other day, I saw a story that someone was linking on Twitter that I thought was worth sharing. But I had a look, and the article was in the Sun, and I didn't retweet it. And that's just me. See, for me, it's not about Hillsborough for me. I'm not from Liverpool. I know I say I grew up in the stadium where this happened, but it didn't personally impact on me. You know, their poison goes way beyond false testimony during a harrowing experience for people from Liverpool and others, of course, who were in attendance that day. They are insidious and they hold a power over the government of this country very corruptly that even the rest of the media do not possess. The most recent example was the downfall of Matt Hancock. Now, don't get me wrong, the former Health Secretary had done more than enough to need dismissing as a minister. But he wasn't dismissed for failing in his duty. He wasn't dismissed for breaking the ministerial code, which he did. He was dismissed because the Sun newspaper wanted him dismissed. That was all there was to it. Rupert Murdoch, the Sun's owner, was one of the first people in the world to be vaccinated. He takes COVID very seriously, for himself. But he doesn't want the masses to. He didn't like that Matt Hancock was arguing for lockdowns when the experts asked for it. He didn't like the fact that he wanted the government to listen to the experts. So he had the Sun publish the indiscretion at the office to get rid of him. That's why they did it. They were sitting on this for ages. They didn't publish it as soon as they had it. They used it deliberately because they wanted to get rid of him. You know, and it was at once a removal of someone who was a thorn in their side. But on the other hand, what that story did, it was a demonstration of their strength. You know, how much power that newspaper wields. It was a warning to other ministers that they'd best take heed. You know, don't you go opposing us. So in writing in the Sun, unlike other newspapers, Keir Starmer certainly should have known he would be creating a bit of a storm. Now, before I get on to my specific criticisms, I also need to point out some hypocrisy here so that we don't muddy the waters with this. So in terms of the criticisms, where is it mostly coming from? It's coming from two main camps. Liverpool MPs, of course, but also the anti-Starmer group, you know, and others in Labour. Those are hypocrites. Now, I try to ignore them now because at the end of the day, I'm not interested in any form of tribalism. Certainly not in the Labour Party. It's deeply destructive. But I'm not letting this one go. So Diane Abbott, for example, attacked Starmer for speaking to the Sun. Back in 2010, when she was running to replace Gordon Brown as leader of the Labour Party, she wrote an article in the Sun herself, saying how important it was to engage with Sun readers. Without Sun readers, we cannot win. We need to engage with you. She wrote that in the Sun. This was not before Hillsborough. This was long after Hillsborough. Nothing had changed with the Sun. What's changed, Diane? Oh, it suited you to write for the Sun then, and it suits you to jump on this bandwagon now. But yeah, talk about principles. Then Jeremy Corbyn also echoed his opposition to the move from Starmer. That would be this Jeremy Corbyn. This guy here, with a copy of the Sun under his arm that he's just purchased. So no, I'm not interested in any of the hypocrites in this debate, only those who have a genuine position. Now, where my criticism will come from is this. So one of the Liverpool MPs, whose name I'm afraid I forget, who attacked Starmer, and let's be clear, these Liverpool MPs may or may not be doing so because of a genuine principle, but regardless, they'd be acting this way anyway because their constituents would expect them to. But one of them invited Starmer to come and speak to the families of those who lost their lives at Hillsborough. Now, this would be a bit of an acid test for me, because if I were the Labour leader and I had been persuaded or just decided myself that actually we need to start engaging with the Sun readers now, and like I say, there are very good reasons for doing so, you know, I would have anticipated the backlash, and I would absolutely be expecting to, at the very least, go to Liverpool and do just that. Defend my actions to the people most affected. If he doesn't, then he shouldn't have written this piece at this time. Now, don't get me wrong, he should be engaging Sun readers, just like readers of the Times, the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, maybe even the Daily Express. The stakes are simply too high to deliberately fail to engage with as many voters as possible because it might be upsetting to some people. It's not even a question of saying that Liverpool cannot take precedence over the entire country. The people of Liverpool are particularly badly treated by this government, and as I say, this government is controlled in no small part by the owner of the Sun. You know, we cannot have a position where we are able to say, oh yeah, we let the Tories back in for another 5 years, but not to worry, at least we didn't write an article in the Sun. You know, the best way to give the Sun a kick in the metaphorical balls is to get rid of the Tories. It's that simple. But it's a question of timing. See, there's nothing significant about the time right now. I know the Tory party conference is on, but in the grand context, that's not that significant. We're not believed to be heading for an election. We could be. The Conservatives could trigger a general election any time now. But we're not believed to be heading to one very soon. So if he writes this piece now, as he has done, he's going to need to do another later. Even if there is a general election next summer, he's going to have to do it again. Because those Sun readers, even if they are convinced by what he says, and I don't know what he said, they're going to have forgotten come the next election. He's going to have to do it again. He will need to keep doing it, I would say at least once a year, until the election, given that he's now started. And if he doesn't nip the attacks in the bud now, they will happen every time he does it. So if Starmer doesn't tackle this head on and that has to include a visit to Hillsborough families, then he should not have written this piece at this time. I've said recently that anything a senior politician does is controversial. You know, even down to the food you eat. It's controversial somehow. Some people will approve and some people will be upset. And it's all about having more of your target voters approve than disprove, gaining more votes than you lose. But again, remember, because first past the post in target areas. Now, in writing for The Sun, when we may be years away from a general election yet, we may not, but we may be, that's got limited benefits right now. If there weren't any losses to be made, I would say absolutely worth the gains, because very few gains, but still better, you know, there's no losses to worry about. But if it means leaving himself with an open avenue of attack for the future, it really wasn't worth it. In fact, this is very similar to the situation whereby Jeremy Corbyn refused to defend himself against attacks whilst he was leader. I really don't see how Starmer can afford to make the same mistake. Do not ever, ever brush off criticism as being unimportant. Do not ever brush off attacks, because if you don't tackle them, people think they're valid. You know, because they can all conspire to bite you on the arse in the future as well. So my sort of conclusion is that Starmer is justified in writing The Sun at some point. It is in everyone's interest who is not benefiting from Tory rule to do so. But it is not appropriate to do this now unless he is prepared to enter the lion's den and robustly defend it to the point where future pieces do not draw the same criticism. He has to deal with it now. If he can't or won't do that, then the timing at least was naive, if not the act itself. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.